Mr. Investor, welcome back to the channel, baby. So there's a lot been going on. BNGO today went up, down, and all around and finished almost where it started. In fact, on Friday it closed at $3.60. Today it closed at $3.60. We didn't move anywhere, but it's better than being minus 6% in Vitae and minus 4.8% Pac Bio. And something interesting to note, it looks like we have an assassin on board. Why do I say this? Because another article comes out from Bashar Issa. And what's interesting, for a guy that doesn't own any shares in bionano genomics, he covers it quite a lot. Of course, he's trying to give us his valid points for his analysis of the company. Within the latest hit article he put out today, he disclosed, we have no stock option or similar derivative position in any of the companies mentioned. So we're going to be looking at this guy's article, but before we begin, please hit that juicy like button. It's free and it helps the channel out immensely. Thank you so much to all of my channel members. Shout out to you guys down there. There's a list of you there. Bing, bing, bing. If you'd like to support the channel, click the join button. You can click any tier up here. I'm going to give you a nice analysis today. I'm going to show you a few bits and pieces, covering what institutions are doing with the stock. Sapphire on board, baby. What people are using the Sapphire for and what they plan to do. Finishing off talking about the major game plan and what I plan to do with this company, with this stock. So please support the channel. Hit the like, hit the subscribe. Drop me some comments down below. Tell me your thoughts and feelings. And any donations, you can click the PayPal link in my description box below. It really helps out, so I thank you so much. Please remember, none of this is financial advice, it's for entertainment only. Now let's get started. So discussion on Twitter is, can bionano genomics hit $5 per share this week? So I'm not an expert on short interest, and I'm looking at Fintel right now. But apparently it says short interest ratio, there's 1.66 days to cover. Apparently the short interest is 16% of the float. However, the off-exchange short volume ratio is 51.65%. Fintel is including figures they're pulling from the dark pool volume. According to a website called FinViz as well, the shares outstanding for bionano genomics is 285.5 million. And if we're defining and looking at short squeeze, there's a little example from Fintel. They said if two companies both have 25% short float, but one has 10 million unshorted shares floating and the other has 200 million unshorted shares floating, the first one is clearly more susceptible to a short squeeze. So the lower the amount of unshorted shares floating, the more susceptible and more likely it is to have a short squeeze. Let me know what you think. Do you think we'll be hitting $5 by the end of this week? Currently in Wall Street Bets, I've been seeing a lot of comments, a lot of posts pumping Bed Bath & Beyond. So that's gone up 23% today. In the last month, it's gone up 222%. Will we see a lot of social traffic coming from various media platforms, including Reddit? My guess is as good as yours, but I'm holding long and strong. I'm waiting for my magic number for me to cash out. Now let's cover this guy Bashar Issa. So for a guy that doesn't own any stock in bionano genomics, we've been taking a look at his articles, and we can see here, if you look at Bashar Issa, he's a contributing writer. He has a master's degree in finance from Queen Mary's University of London and a bachelor's degree in economics from Middlesex University. He also worked in an investment fund here in the United Kingdom. And if we take a look here, you'll be able to see that BNGO has 8 articles. He's written 8 articles about a company that he doesn't own, and most of them are articles bashing BNGO. It's the most he's written on any company. You can see here, the next is Clove, 7, but BNGO is the most written about for him. So let's go through this article, and right at the end, we're going to look at some of the interesting statements he's made. So first of all, he spoke briefly about, meme stocks. He's been talking about how BNGO shares went down about 9% last week, but they bounced back really quickly. It recovered. We obviously saw Invitae the other week get pumped because a lot of the genomic companies were heavily shorted, especially the ones in ARK's portfolio. We can see it went from $2. I think it went all the way up 280%, 287% at one point, I think it was. It went to like nearly $9. He stated that BNGO's share price mirrored the meme traders' hype. And in terms of mentions in Reddit in the last 24 hours when he wrote this article, it was up 1,137%. The little figure here says 833 mentions. This was just after Q2 earnings. He said that during the time, optical genome mapping, there was a recent study talking about the ability for OGM to diagnose cerebellar ataxia. Bashar Issa said that he doesn't believe the publication was the driver of the share price and the performance. He believes that it's simply kind of meme stock and meme stock behavior. He said that the publication wasn't the first publication or the best designed to highlight the advantages of OGM over Southern blot. A lot of us were talking about how there's going to be the cytogenetics revolution and how it can replace Southern blot. This was covered by various websites, various news agencies around the world, talking about the study, noted that successful use of optical genome mapping may replace the Southern blot analysis. Bashar continued to say that each year there's about 200 papers that are published that are citing optical genome mapping, and by default, Sapphire is the only product utilizing the technology on the market today. Market leaders in OGM. He continues by saying that optical genome mapping has limited literature coverage, offering an attractive exploration ground for researchers who want to stand out and increase their chances of getting published in academic journals as they build out their careers. It is not necessarily a sign of market acceptance, and the good news is that many of these papers praise the device. Still, I believe that the recent volatility mirrors market adjustments to information relayed in the Q2 results, as discussed below. What he's failing to see is that this is part of bionano genomics' plan. You have to get this out to the researchers, get this out to the people who can present research forward to convince the governing bodies to make it acceptable and as part of the guidelines. What they want to do is make optical genome mapping gold standards, and they get it in front of people. So let's go look back at this article. This article was April 2021, so last year. They were talking about the continued global expansion in South Africa of the Sapphire system. If you guys have been watching my channel for a while, you would have known and seen this article before. Joanne Kotze, the head of genetics at Indelo Bio, has said that she was following Bionano's progress for years. She was impressed by OGM, and she put this statement out saying that she's the national board examiner for the specialized field of cytogenetics of the Society of Medical Laboratory Technologists of South Africa. What she wanted to do was formally register her Sapphire-based laboratory as a training laboratory for the field of cytogenomics and write optical genome mapping into the South African cytogenetic guidelines. Where chromosomal microarray has failed to replace standard cytogenetic testing of cancer samples, I believe optical genome mapping has the potential to revolutionize cytogenetic analysis in Africa and the rest of the world. So now that was a researcher with chromosomal microarray and someone who wants to write optical genome mapping to actually replace it as the gold standard. Over here, we can see that other researchers have just released about optical genome mapping and Southern blot and saying how it has the potential to replace it also. He goes on to talk about revenue and saying how there's a year-over-year comparison and how the growth has been 73% in revenue year over year. He said the most obvious thing that's guiding this was the biodiscovery acquisition, which added 26% to this quarter's revenue growth. He then went back to calling it a meme stock and going back to meme stock bonanza, and he said that last year it sent BNGO from being a company on the verge of bankruptcy to a multi-billion unicorn. That's when it went from 50 cents to $15.69. He said this has been good because BNGO's actually changed. You know, they've expanded the sales team and sales. He said that Bionano Genomics actually looks like a different company compared to 12 months ago. He believes that the cash raised by retail investors during the meme stock frenzy has helped Bionano Genomics to actually increase its revenue very slightly rather than actually the momentum of having product acceptance. So he said he still doesn't believe that the market will actually accept Sapphire. He then spoke about a service revenue uptick, having this small increase in its service revenue uptick of about $400,000 quarter over quarter. He then spoke about flow cells and saying that, you know, labs are using Sapphire less often. In this graph, he put this here, right? So he's stating that this is because of flow cells. They're not using that many flow cells. What we need to remember is they're putting in all the key sites. They want to get adoption of 10,000 Sapphires. That's their aim. It wants to be over 10k Sapphire systems installed. Right now we have less than 200. As you can see here, we have 196 at the end of Q2 2022. And when these guys are talking about consumables, remember there's a lot of things that we're waiting for that's going to come into play. So we're waiting for screening, we're waiting for, you know, a lot of approvals as well. For people waiting for laboratory developed tests and insurance reimbursement, stuff like that. You're not going to be using the Sapphire system for diagnosis if you haven't got your laboratory developed tests first there, and you've got also the pricing and the insurance and the Medicare, Medicaid. So although we're waiting for this kind of snowball effect of Sapphire system installs, and then we want to see, you know, a lot of flow cells and consumables being used, this is still going to take time to build out. But by targeting the researchers, by funding projects, by, you know, getting it into the labs, you're doing half the work. The rest of the work has to be done by all of the guidelines and the leaders, the market leaders who set guidelines. Now, instead of a first mover advantage, he's saying it's a disadvantage being the first mover because you're pushing and trying to make the way for it. And he stated that the main obstacle that is facing BNGO is the biotech industry's herd mentality. So he said there's a small number of opinion leaders, which is why they're getting together opinion leaders. They're, you know, pushing optical genome mapping into their eyes through lots of research as well, and through lots of the world's leading researchers and academics publishing. He said that, you know, these opinion leaders set standards, methods, and direction of research. For now, it doesn't seem that it's been able to penetrate the hearts and minds of this group, and the golden standards of genome testing in the clinical and research industries haven't changed. This is primarily due to the lack of adequate literature around optical genome mapping and Sapphire, which is why Eric Coleman is targeting that. They're funding these research projects. They want to make sure that they get the Sapphire system into universities, into key sites like the Marie Institute in France, into King's College London, the hospital there. He goes on to say, as manifested in the FDA's decision to turn down the company's application for current procedural terminology, CPT codes, offered to healthcare providers to streamline reporting and record making, paving the way for more streamlined insurance reimbursement for clinical labs using Sapphire, which for now struggle to pass the expenses from patients to insurance companies, hindering BNGO's sales. The FDA specifically asked for more data on the use of Sapphire. The data is there. It's being published every day by world-leading researchers and people who are well respected in the industry. Shout out to Rashmi Kanagaushamana, whose article just got published in the Leukemia Journal today in a Nature article as well. High-resolution structural variant profiling of myeloid dysplastic syndromes by optical genome mapping uncovers cryptic aberrations of prognostic and therapeutic significance. Within the study, optical genome mapping improved predictive prognosis by 21% and 17%, as you can see here. And this was the first and largest study reporting the value of combined structural variant profiling and next generation sequencing for blood cancer. Quick question for you guys. If bionano genomics does get FDA approval, what do you think we're going to see with the stock price on that day? Especially if, they're saying this meme stock bonanza, if there's a high search volume, if across all the social platforms they're scraping and they can see that BNGO is going to fly, do you think institutions are also going to load into BNGO upon FDA approval? Bashar then goes to talk about, how much money it costs in order to sponsor research projects and how the money has allowed it to attract management talent such as Alka Chowdhury from PerkinElmer. But his concern is operating expenses has more than doubled and there's a first mover disadvantage and a lot of work still left. Then he puts in his opinion about the risks, saying there's a risk the company's efforts will fail, a chance highlighted by its stagnant position in the product introduction stage for almost 2 decades now. Even if it establishes a market, BNGO lacks a technological moat to benefit from a first mover advantage. Why do they have all those patents then? 2 decades, but sometimes it takes time to implement technology into place, especially if you don't have the funds. And now that they do have the funds because of last year. And then he states that, another worry is if there is a market that becomes developed, it's easy for a deep-pocketed peer or competitor to leverage their platform to enter the market. So he thinks that someone's going to sweep in like Thermo Fisher, PacBio, 10X, Illumina NanoString, Oxford Nanopore, and someone will be able to copy the technology and take part of their market. What he failed to mention was that if they have all the patents in place and these guys, it will take years and decades for them to catch up or for them to develop their own technology to try and do optical genome mapping. Wouldn't it be better for a buyout? Wouldn't it be better for a partnership for these guys to buy them out? Especially if they got those deep pockets and they want to be first to that new market that's been developed. Wouldn't they just want to buy out bionano genomics? Again, doesn't say anything, doesn't entertain the thought. He just puts 3 negative points in his last paragraph. Then he has a summary and then he has a brief kind of exit. And we're going to take a look at his exiting terminology and his phrase and how his moods kind of swing. So how he's talking about all this negative information, 8 hit articles on bionano genomics, continues to complain that it's got a low revenue base, small changes translate to inflated growth figures. It doesn't necessarily mirror a market acceptance momentum. He says the company still faces lots of challenges, like enough literature, so enough studies for its products to help it gain market and regulatory approvals. The studies are there and they'll continue to come. Then he speaks about FDA's decision to turn down the company's CPT application. Now let's look at the closing statement here. However, from a fundamental perspective, I believe that the company has a solid product that could add value to genome analysis, enjoying a market position, placing it favorably to profit from expanding genetic medicines and research market when and if its product gains acceptance from biotech's opinion leaders. So right there, after an advert, right at the bottom, that's where he leaves his finishing statement saying that, the product is solid, it's going to add value to genome analysis, and it's positioned favorably to profit. Expanding genetic medicines, is he talking about personalized medicines? What he fails to mention as well is screening. When you're screening populations for disease as well, if it becomes part of, embedded into screening for every newborn, searching for certain disease, that could also be a juicy chunk of the pie. So it's interesting for someone who doesn't own the stock, has no interest in owning the stock, and said that within the next 72 hours he will not initiate any positions, neither will Seeking Alpha. This guy loves to write on bionano genomics, and him writing this statement right at the end, have the big institutions already built out their positions, all the hit articles have come out, and now some of the analysts are going to start to slightly turn positive. Institutions, so a lot of these guys were lowering their kind of exposure to bionano genomics. They were selling shares when it was up in the 5s, 6 and 7s, and now they start building position again. 23% increase, 23% increase. The Bank of New York, Mellon Corp, and Naveen Asset Management. I think these guys both had millions of shares. I remember Naveen Asset Management having a lot of shares. If we scroll down as well, I wanted to show you these guys too. Geode Capital Management, 17% increase in shares. These guys had millions of shares as well before. They've got 5.1 million now. They had even more before. Vanguard's lowered by 1% their shares. But if we take a look at BlackRock, they increased from 18 million shares now to 21 million shares. It's an increase of 13%. Renaissance Technologies, these guys I think almost exited bionano genomics, so they had such a low amount, and now they've increased by 3,200%. They've now got 3.6 million shares again. These guys before heavily invested in bionano genomics, so many shares. So in terms of market acceptance, remember these guys are saying, analysts like this Bashar, this guy who's bashing BNGO, the analyst is saying that he doesn't think it has market acceptance. So you can see here, this is a client in Brazil. They said that they've received their training from Erica Hendrick of bionano genomics. So inside of the laboratory of Uniscience do Brazil, they'll be providing optical genome mapping services to the whole country. So they're very excited. They believe heavily in the technology. And this is actually a client, a customer who is now, they've got their training. Now they're going to start to use flow cells, and they're planning to provide the service to the whole country. So they believe there's going to be high demand. They're excited about it. Next, let's talk about these guys. Harry Perkins Institute of Medical Research. On the 10th of March 2022, these guys stated that they're going to be installing a bionano sapphire instrument in diagnostic genomics, PathWest, in a collaborative partnership between themselves, Harry Perkins Institution of Medical Research, PathWest, and FSHD Global Research Foundation. So these guys got the money together for a grant. They said it's going to facilitate new diagnostic genomic tests for patients. So they're going to be able to diagnose patients and use cutting-edge genomic research in coming months. By August time, here on Facebook, I found bionano genomics sapphire inside the base. Thank you, Muscular Dystrophy WA, FSHD Global Research Foundation there. And if you scroll down here, you'll be able to see what they were saying. They're saying it's a new era in FSHD diagnostics in Australia. It's happening here in WA. So the team has run the first patient samples through the new bionano optical genome mapping instrument. What are they working towards? Securing NATA accreditation and Medicare funding so they can do FSHD diagnostic testing. So insurance reimbursement, Medicare funding, that's what they're after. So they'll be able to run this and diagnose plenty of patients. Again, another team that's invested in the Sapphire system and believe in its capability. When we're talking about FSHD, there's two types. There's type 1, and type 1 accounts for 95% or more than 9 in 10 people with FSHD, and then you have type 2 that affects 5%. In terms of the population in the world, the UMass Chan Medical School over here, they stated that about a conservative estimate is around about 1 in 14,286 births throughout the world. However, this might be a low estimate, and the actual incidence may be as common as 1 in 7,500 people. The data in 2018 stated there's probably more than 130 million babies born each year. In terms of analyst rating, they're stating, there's still 150% upside here. They're offering an average price target of $9, a low of $6, and a high of $12. Now, for those guys who have been averaging down or been accumulating BNGO shares in the $1 range, congratulations, because if this does pop to $5, I know some people will be taking some nice profits. Some people will be exiting. If this does pop to $9, $12 within the next 12 months, you guys are going to be smiling. I think there is a possibility we're going to see $5 this week for bionano genomics, with institutions building, heavily their position, probably in the $1, $2 range in the last 3 months. Institutional ownership now going up to 28%, with the majority of these institutions long only. 259 out of 271 are long only. Some are long and short, and there's only 3 that are only shorting. Let me know your thoughts and feelings. Let me know where you think the stock price is going to end up by the end of the week, the end of the month, and the end of this year. Show me that in the comments down below. Now, please remember, none of this is financial advice. It's for entertainment only. I'm wishing all my cowboys a yeehaw! A lovely week ahead. If you guys are able to support the channel, please click channel memberships. You can join here. You can join on Patreon as well, or you can send me a small donation on PayPal. Every little bit helps, and it helps me create content. Thank you so much for your love and support. I appreciate you guys, and I'm going to catch you in the next video. Mr. Invest a Lot, over and out, baby.